Hello and welcome to Michael's Minty Music for today. Today we review the soundtrack for Kid Icarus, released in 1987 on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And it is available through the Nintendo Music app along with the soundtrack for the Famicom Disk System version, released in 1986 in Japan. The two soundtracks have the same songs in them, but they do sound a bit different between the two, with the NES tracks being slightly more polished overall. I'll be reviewing both in this review since they're both the same. They have the same tracks on them. This is the track listing, and as you can see, there's almost a minute of difference between the two versions, with the NES version being longer. Weirdly, there are a few tracks which are longer on the Famicom, but for the most part, the NES tracks are each a couple seconds longer. And these are the tracks I added to my playlist, 4 out of 12 on each version. The first two tracks are pretty good, and honestly, this album is pretty much alright, but most of the tracks are just a little bit boring and unmemorable. Unlike the Metroid soundtrack, none of the songs here are jarring or annoying, but most of them don't do enough to be kind of actually good. You could do a lot worse with the soundtrack, but definitely a lot better. The music here just stays in the background in the game, which is fine, but not great. Overall, this is not bad to listen to, but I would not choose to listen to it unless I was playing the game. My favorite track here is probably Stage 3. It's the best stage track in my opinion, although the range and quality on this album is pretty low. Almost all of the songs are pretty close in quality to each other, so most of the tracks are only a bit worse than this one. I ranked the NES version better than the Famicom version. It's definitely more polished and clean. The NES clearly had better audio software. It was only on the Metroid soundtrack that the Famicom version was superior, and that is probably because the Metroid took some risks which sounded more interesting on the Famicom than the NES. In general, it's clear that the NES was better than the Famicom music-wise, although for this album, like all the doubles, they're both pretty close in quality. They both have the same songs in them, so you can't really change that much just by changing the hardware. Additionally, I rank both of these albums below the Metroid versions, although it's pretty close. But really, Metroid is just more interesting and takes more risks. So while the quality is very similar between them, I think the Metroid soundtrack is better in both versions. Additionally, due to the timing, these albums obviously don't take my top spot for Nintendo soundtrack for 1986 and 1987. That obviously stays with the Legend of Zelda soundtracks, which came out 1986, 1987, same years. And they're both more iconic and better than Metroid and Kid Icarus. Also, these albums aren't going to take my top spot from those years overall. That stays with Kind of Magic by Queen and Kick by NXS, both of which are much better than really anything video game soundtracks were doing at the time. So, thank you for watching. Next up will be the soundtrack for Super Mario 2, released in 1988 on the Nintendo Music app. We're finally out of the dual Famicom NES tracks, which means we're finally moving into sort of more full albums for soundtracks. Although it will be a bit before we finish NES games. I think Super Mario 2 is not super long, but Super Mario 3 has closer to 20-ish tracks, so that one is actually sort of a full album. So stay tuned for that, and as always, stay minty.